Wendy asked me if my holidays were great, and I realized that I'm in big trouble when I got more excited about the start of the Albright Institute than I did about my holidays. And I told her, enjoy those holidays while you're young, because when you get older, you have to do all the shopping, make all the meals, spend all the money, do all of this and all of that. This, to me, is, some people like to go to Disney World. I like to go to the Albright Institute. It's my opportunity to recharge and refuel. So I'm Joanne Murray. I'm the director of the Institute. I'm joined this morning and will be throughout most of the Institute by our faculty director, Professor Joseph Joyce of the Economics Department. And I want to introduce you to a few people, but more importantly, I want to talk about this month. I want to talk about what I want you to leave behind and what I want you to jump forward to do. Okay? Because what we've come to appreciate about the Albright Institute is that you actually have a way of learning that we're going to require of you, but we don't require, to my knowledge, anywhere else at Wellesley. Because many of you take 300-level seminar classes, but you're mostly with other majors when you do that. Mostly when you do that kind of advanced level work, where you're doing primary source research, where you're having to put yourself out of your comfort zone with analysis, where you're having to take some intellectual risks and you're not comfortable. You are with other people who have similar interests to yours. You don't have to say, well, what does a studio art major have to contribute here that is perhaps more valuable, but certainly as valuable as what I have to contribute. So throughout last year, what occurred to me a lot is every day there was a number that stood out for me. The number that stands out for me this morning is 26. Of the 40 of you, there are 26 different majors. And you'll be in a group with people from very different majors than your own. And you will not be asked to have 5 presentations at the end of this time. You'll be asked to have 1 presentation. And it's not a presentation like you give in your class at the end of a semester. It is a presentation where you are advising the former director of the World Bank and his wife and partner, who has specialized in education in 99 countries around the world throughout her lifetime. You are going to present to them the best thinking you have collectively about how to solve a chronic, intractable, transnational issue that currently we need help with. This is not a small feat. It is, however, an exhilarating one. So I want to ask you, as you think about this month ahead, to realize that as much as your students, yes, you're also consultants. Okay? A few years back, Teach for America went through the roof in terms of applications. And it's not just because the economy tanked. It's because they made a set of very important decisions. And they asked McKinsey, one of the top consulting firms, to advise them about their hiring process and about their professional development process. And I'm here to tell you that those McKinsey consultants came in and looked at where they were stuck and looked at where there were structural issues, where there were management or performance issues. They did a best practices benchmarking. And they gave the information that nobody else could give that allowed a perspective on what Teach for America needed to do to brand itself in a real way as a top organization. This is what we're asking you to do. All right? And I want to talk to you about that in the next 15 minutes, about some ideas that we have, that I have, about how you can go about doing that. But part of it is going to ask you to set some goals for yourself over the course of this next month of who you are as a learner, who you are as a leader, because it is about leadership through service that we have structured this institute. Now, when Andy Shannon and I originally flew down to Washington to meet with Secretary Albright to talk to her about the institute, she said, "I don't want another building. I don't need a library. I want something that transforms the lives of young women to go out there and be activist, compassionate leaders. I want something multidisciplinary, cross-disciplinary. I want something that takes the liberal arts and bumps it up a huge notch. Because what we know about the liberal arts is that they are a powerful mechanism for having a view on the world, but that in the synthesis of the various disciplines, yes, we need specialists, but in the synthesis of the various disciplines, we can find solutions to problems that are not coming from one area. Okay, if we're talking about the famine, what kind of problem is that? It's an environmental problem, it's a political problem, it's a cross-disciplinary problem that will require a cross-disciplinary solution. And while the specialists can go deep in one area, if they can't talk across that, they can't come up with something that's going to have staying power. So this is where I want for you to look at the people around you, look at the 26 different majors, look at the 14 different countries that are represented here. And when I was in London last month, and I was talking with alumni, we did an Albright session on the road, and I was talking with alumni, I said, actually, we could take these 40 women and put them in a room by themselves for a month, and phenomenal things would happen. You all will likely learn as much from each other in the next month as you will from any faculty member up here. And that is not a statement about the power of the faculty members, it's a statement about you. So to mine your own resources and to form alliances. I want to read you a quote that to me exemplifies the spirit with which I want you to approach this next month. And it's a quote from Secretary Albright, who will be joining us for the 2 concluding days of the Institute and will be enormously generous in her insights, but also her personal perspectives on the world and what keeps her moving and has kept her moving. And she writes, by definition, learning means exploring areas of life and opinions with which you are not already familiar. Instead of choosing to read or listen only to people whose views make you most comfortable, choose instead to study those who make you the most upset. Instead of surrounding yourself with friends whose experiences are similar to yours, reach out to classmates whose stories are unknown. Instead of repeating over and over again the opinions you've expressed in the past, stop venting for a month. Ask yourself why you believe as you do, and submit your own conceptions of truth to the rigorous standards of critical thinking. Above all, I ask you to understand that there's an enormous difference between entering into an argument for the purpose of winning and engaging in research and discussion for the purpose of stretching your mind and giving free rein to your conscience. So while we'll be talking about the chronic conditions that weaken society, lack of water, food, disease, sanitation, war, violence, little or no work opportunity, we will also reference those issues with the contemporary events and challenges as they unfold. I remember last year when Secretary Albright walked in the room and said, let's talk about Tunisia. And there were a lot of blank faces across the room. The students were incredibly engaged, but they weren't engaged in reading the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or Washington Post or whatever it is they read. And while we were in the middle of the Institute, Bouazizi had set himself on fire and died a year ago today, starting what many people credit as the Arab Spring that grew and flowed out of that. So one of the things that I'm going to offer to you is that you can sign up to do a briefing every morning. We're going to have a 5-minute briefing. And on a first-come, first-choose, you can sign up using the site technology that we have, that we want for you to tell us in 5 minutes or fewer, what are the world events that have unfolded that you feel are important to the issues we're studying, and why are they important? Why does it matter that Steve Jobs died last year? Why does it matter that Kim Jong-il died a few weeks ago? Why does that matter? Why does it matter when why does a major natural disaster that unfolded into a major nuclear crisis in Japan matter? Why does it matter still now? And how can we link these events and the people who are trying to solve them to the work and to our study here? What does it mean that we think about throughout all of the issues, the role of technology, the role of gender? Does it matter? And if so, why does it matter? Okay, because all of these are going to come up in all of our talks. What happened in Europe? How does what happened in Europe and is happening in Europe have an influence on what's happening around the world? I'm hesitant to talk too much about that since one of our world experts is right here in the form of your faculty director. But we're going to be talking about, yes, the chronic conditions, but the landscape on which they are folding and how it's being shaped and not shaped. We're going to talk about something throughout the Institute, intended and unintended consequences. Catherine Marshall talks a lot about that in her lectures. Well, so you think you have the best plan in the world, and as Secretary Albright talks about, it is not a game of chess. It's a game of billiards. And you think you've anticipated everything that will happen from your action. But in fact, there are always unintended consequences that are incredibly powerful. How do you think about those? Okay? So, in concluding, I mostly want to talk to you about why we've structured the Institute the way we have and what it is we want for you to do about it. Now, you've all heard several times by now that the Institute is based on the premise that we take our top academics, our very best theologians, our very best philosophers, our best economists, our best political scientists, and we bring them in here to you. And we can tell you, they don't give you an off-the-shelf lecture. They work very, very hard for the time they have with you. And then we put onto that an insider's expert perspective. We take the major thought leaders in their fields and we bring them in here to say, great, here's wonderful theory, here are great concepts. Here's what happens in the world when you're trying to apply that. And they give you case studies and they give you access to information about what goes wrong, what goes right, how even the best laid plan needs to have other elements in it to make it move forward. And they give you something that's far more powerful than even that. They give you access to themselves. Now, the poor people who've been along the road with me have had to hear this quote several times. And my poor daughter's had to hear it every day of her life, practically. She rolls her eyes now when she hears it. But it's very important that these women are giving you access to themselves. Secretary Albright talks to you about her life. She lets you ask any question you want to ask. And she answers it honestly. Okay? But the other faculty and presenters do as well. So I have found that amidst the theory, that amidst the case studies, the best thing that sometimes you hold on to the rest of your life is a very powerful story. And there's a woman who always moved me when she said, and her name is Billie Avery, she was the founder of the National Black Women's Health Movement, she was a MacArthur winner, and she said, take every lesson you can from a woman's life. You have an opportunity to take a lesson from a woman and a man's life. You have access to do that. That's an enormous privilege. And I encourage you to do that. So you have the faculty perspective, you have the expert perspective. We're going to send you into the world and give you the hands-on internship perspective. That's wonderful. But I want to talk a little bit about, well, why are we doing this? We're doing it because we have enormously high expectations of you. There are only 80 other people, and actually, with the few that we've needed to remove, there are 78 other people who hold the title Albright Fellow. It is a tremendous responsibility to carry that because you are yet to discover the doors that that opens for you. It's a little scary how many doors it opens for you. But we've invested in you. We have enormously high expectations of you. That you actually are Wellesley's motto that we talk way too much about, that sometimes we use it as a throwaway. You are actually the real deal. And this institute, in a very strange way, and I truly mean this, is not about you. It's about what you will carry forward as part of creating the living legacy of Secretary Madeleine Korbel Albright. That's daunting. It's not too late to get out. But we'll be calling on you when there'll be 120. We'll be calling on you to say, how are you networking with your Wellesley sisters? How are you addressing these problems? Now, this is not to say that you have to do it in any one specific way. And in fact, we want the poets here. We want the playwrights here. One of the most powerful men in Europe died in 2011, Václav Havel, a dear friend of Secretary Albright's. He was a playwright. He was a poet who believed in his ideals so strongly that he stood up to the communist government. He led what's called the Velvet Revolution, and he led his country as a president. When he was asked how he wanted to be remembered, he said, I want, whether as a great politician or a great poet and playwright, he said, I want to be remembered as a poet and playwright who was challenged as a citizen and stepped up. So my charge to you is for you to identify what is the gift that you have? What is that gift? And then how can that gift be of service to greater humanity? What is your gift and how can it be of service to greater humanity? We will be there with you as you struggle with that. It's a lifelong affiliation you now have. But that's my charge to you. Okay. Now, I said I'm going to do some housekeeping, but this really matters because it's part of the charge. You are no longer on Wellesley time. We're actually going to start on time. So that means I'm going to start talking at 9 o'clock every day. So I don't want you coming in and putting your books down and sitting down because actually outside of Wellesley, people actually do start on time. So we're going to start on time, all right? I would really like you to be prepared, and I'd like you to substitute thinking about a good grade for pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. I would like you to focus on setting some personal goals that are very bold for yourself. And I want you to think about the fact that We really meant it when we said you are co-creators of this institute. We've only done this 3 times. Now, this does not mean that we want you to fill out an SEQ. This means we want you to think about how you can help create this institute. If you get a good idea, and in the first year, the international students were all eating over at Slater at lunch. They got a bag of bread and some cheese, and they realized that they were just doing it, but they hadn't thought to include everybody else. Someone stood up and said, "We've been eating at Slater, everybody come." In the first year, someone said, "We want to know about y'all's lives. Why don't you join us for lunch and tell us about who you are?" Last year, someone came up with an idea for a certain way that they wanted to have access to offices for Skyping and this and that. They didn't come and say, "You all need to do that." They said, "We've got an office. It'll be open from 4 to 6. Sign up on outside if you want to use it for Skyping." So take initiative. And lastly, focus on the questions and not on the answers. So Craig Murphy, the very first year of the Institute, Craig Murphy, political scientist, very first year of the Institute, was talking at a faculty dinner at the end of it, and he laughed and he said, "Yeah, you know, they're going to be spending the rest of their lives answering those questions. We got to get the answer. We got to get the questions right." Okay, so we're not really here to solve or to find specific answers. We're here to try to gain an understanding by knowing what is the question, what's the right question. And finally, my hope is that through this process you will feel more humbled and less entitled. Because it is only in truly being humbled that you can be open enough. If these problems could have been solved, they'd have been solved a long time ago, because there have been smart people working on them for a very long time. How is it that you can be of service in understanding these and leading with your 39 other sisters towards hopeful solutions, hopeful approaches? So with that said, I welcome you. I'm thrilled you're here. I can't wait to get to know you. I want to ask each of you before tomorrow to write your name larger, because I'm old and I'm going to determine to learn your names. But if you could write it in bold so that I can see it better. I'm not the only old eyes that will be standing up here in front of you. I want you to know a lot of people cold call. So don't think you're only going to get called on when your hand goes up. Be prepared all the time, at any time, from any of our presenters. To step up and to stay alert. So we have a student who's introducing our very first faculty presenter, Catherine Marshall. Please come forward.